everyone, so today we're going to be talking about CHAPPELL. Everyone's been talking about her right now because of her recent statements about fan behavior and her various posts online essentially begging people to respect her and her desperately trying to build boundaries between her and her fans. This video is titled CHAPPELL, The Cost of Commercial Success, and if you're familiar with my videos, you know I made a video like this about Doja Cat a couple years ago. I've made a couple of videos about Doja Cat actually and her relationship to fame and the parasocial relationship that a lot of celebrities and especially pop stars seem to really struggle with. And so I wanted to talk about that in the context of CHAPPELL because I think her and Doja Cat actually have a lot in common with how they feel about fame and the parasocial relationship of it all. But CHAPPELL is still in a very unique situation, and I think her rise to fame has been very fascinating to see and pretty crazy. So yeah, I wanted to give some background on who she is as an artist and her journey as an artist, and talk a bit more about fame and the digital age and what it means to be famous now compared to maybe like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and the effects that fame has on people. Thank you ZocDoc for sponsoring today's video. I'm really excited to be working with ZocDoc today. I've used ZocDoc before, way before I even knew I was going to work with them, so trust me when I say I've used this and you should use it too. Being an adult, it comes with its highs and lows. You know, you can eat ice cream for dinner or stay up until 2 in the morning, but you also have to do your taxes and figure out where you're gonna have for dinner each night, as well as booking doctor's appointments. So ZocDoc is the app that can make adulting just a little bit easier. ZocDoc is a free app or website where you can search and compare in-network doctors in your area that specialize in whatever it is that you need. From eye care to skin care to dental care, whatever it may be, there are over 100,000 healthcare providers available for you. You can filter for providers who take your insurance, their location, if they're nearby you, and whatever medical needs you may have, and who are highly rated by verified patients. And one of my favorite things about ZocDoc is that you can actually see the appointment slots, so you can book an appointment super quickly, know exactly what's available, and have a booking in the next 24 to 72 hours. You can even get same-day appointments. So stop putting off those doctor's appointments. Go to ZocDoc.com/Madison. Find and book a highly rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc, ZocDoc.com/Madison, MADISYN. ZocDoc.com/Madison. If you somehow don't know who CHAPPELL is, CHAPPELL is an American singer. She's from Missouri. Her name is Kaylee Rose Amstutz. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced that. She uploaded her first song, Die Young, to YouTube back in 2014, and she was just a teenager at the time. I think she was 17 years old. That song would later be released on an EP once she becomes signed, but she auditioned/performed for a showcase for Atlantic Records back in 2015, and I think some other record labels, and she ended up choosing Atlantic. She signed to them when she was in high school. What I find interesting about her musical journey and her route to music is that she actually started as an actress and wanted to get into acting, but she thought that music would be kind of like a gateway or a foot in the door for her acting career, which I find really interesting, but not uncommon. She got her stage name CHAPPELL from her grandfather, named Chappell, and his favorite song was Strawberry Roan by Curly Fletcher. Her debut single as a signed artist came out in 2017. It's called Good Hurt. She debuted her first EP, School Nights, in 2017. If you know anything about her music before she blew up, you'll know it's very different. She has a completely different tone and quality to her voice, and sonically it's very different. It's very dark and edgy and moody. It kind of reminds me of like Lorde. I'm guessing that was probably inspiration for her when she made this record. Very different from the up-tempo pop bangers that she makes now. She has a much darker and breathier, like alto delivery in her voice compared to her very pop, bright vocals that she does now with her music, which I think is really interesting. She's very versatile. I think something that she has always had present within her music is her theatrics and her dramatic expression, which learning that she started out as an actress, it makes a lot of sense to me now. In 2018, she moved to LA to continue pursuing her dreams as an artist. Obviously, being from Missouri, you know, she had a very different life, and very different experiences and exposure to different communities and culture, specifically the queer community. She was able to really embrace her queer identity and immerse herself in queer culture in LA. And this was a very pivotal moment for her as a person and also as an artist. She went to the Abbey, a very popular gay club in West Hollywood, and that was a very eye-opening experience for her. It was so transformative and inspiring that she wrote an entire song about it called Pink Pony Club. That song, similar to the rest of her songs, were sleeper hits. She made that song in 2020 with Dan Nigro, who is actually Olivia Rodrigo's producer as well. He worked on her album Sour, which popular and super life-changing for Olivia and just like a huge cultural moment for Gen Z. Anyways, together, CHAPPELL Roan and Dan Nigro made Pink Pony Club. Again, it came out in 2020, but unfortunately, nobody moved for a number of factors. I mean, obviously she was very unknown at the time, so there was only so much I think that song could do, but you know, it was very different from her previous work, and I think the main factor was the fact that it came out in 2020. It's a upbeat dance pop song that you want to, you know, party to, and at the time people weren't doing that, and it just wasn't in the cards at the time, unfortunately. And this is kind of when things start to unravel a bit for CHAPPELL Roan. She gets dropped from her label because it's 2020, her song flops, she's not making money, and it's just a really hard time for artists, honestly.
My relationship ended with my label like a lot of artists ended their relationships in 2020. You just get dropped if you're not making money in 2020. Like, music industry crashed. It was touring is how artists make their money, and it was 2020. I wasn't touring, and Pink Pony came out in April of 2020, the worst time for a club song to come out. To be honest, the label didn't even want to put it out, so it was already a very tense relationship. I got dropped because I just wasn't making money for them.
But in a way, it was a blessing in disguise, because I think this was kind of like that moment that I think a lot of successful artists go through, where they feel so beaten down and hopeless that they're like, okay, I'm either making it now and I'm gonna put all of myself into this and just like go full force and then give up and never try again. And that's kind of what happened with her. So she goes through a breakup, gets dropped from her label, moves back home, starts working the drive-through, and she's like, all right, I'm gonna try this again for the last time. October 2020, she moves back to LA. She starts working with Dan Nigro again. She gets a publishing deal with Sony in 2022. She returns to music after a 2-year hiatus with Naked in Manhattan. She joins Olivia Rodrigo on the Sour Tour. And by this time, it seems like she's really kind of gotten her footing and her sound, and is really leaning into the like fun campiness that we know and love her for today. Femininomenon comes out around this time. It's always hard to say. And you know, something that I think is really important to mention with CHAPPELL Roan and her kind of musical transformation is that once she was like, okay, I want to be successful, like I'm gonna do the pop thing and go full out, but also like not take it too seriously and just embrace fun music that my inner child would love. That's when she started to become successful. And I think there's really something to that, like not doing things because you think it'll make you cool, or not doing things because it's what is popular, but doing it because it's what you believe in and what makes you feel good and like really brings out this like really pure, joyful energy. I think doing things that honor your inner child is really important and can really guide you in the right place. On her Naked in North America tour in February 2023, she started incorporating more of her identity as a queer woman and queer culture into her art and her performances by inviting drag queens to open for her shows. And around this time is when she started to realize like, oh, I am a drag queen, by another drag queen who was like, oh, you're not just putting on makeup, girl. You're not just putting on a costume. Like, you are a drag queen.
A drag queen opened for me in London named Crayola, and she was like, oh, you are a drag queen. And I was like, that was the first time I'd ever been told that, because I was just getting ready and like my makeup wasn't done yet, and I was like, oh, you know, I'm like you, I need to get my makeup and my clothes on and kind of transform them. And she was like, honey, you are a drag queen. You're not just getting makeup on, you're a drag queen. And I was like, oh my God, like that was very altering. Like that, there was something that switched.
And I think that was also a very important moment for Chappell Roan, because obviously that's a big part of her brand and how she identifies as an artist and how she expresses herself as like she's queer, she's a face for the queer community, she's a drag queen. Chappell Roan is a drag persona, and we'll get into that later and how I think unfortunately it's maybe not worked out the way that she would hope to in terms of like separating identities, but you kind of see her find herself and grow up throughout her music, because she starts in a very different place and evolves into something completely different. It seems like the more she finds herself and the more that she is herself, the more successful she becomes, which again, great lesson to not just artists out there, but just people in general. Like really staying true to yourself can work wonders for you. And I think that's really cool. And I think that's maybe why people feel so connected to her. It's not just the fact that she's this queer artist who's really like making her way into the mainstream, and there's only so many queer mainstream pop icons out there, but also you can see her grow and see her evolve, and you can see her story play out through her musical evolution. In September 2023, she drops her debut album, The Rise and Fall of a Midwestern Princess. Again, nobody really moved. I mean, she had a fan base at this point, but it wasn't huge. I mean, it's been almost a year since that album came out, and it wasn't until like 5 months ago that people started listening to this album in like a, global mainstream kind of way. So a few months after the album comes out, she goes on tour with her buddy Olivia Rodrigo for the Guts Tour. Okay, she's on tour again with Olivia Rodrigo. She's got a brand new album full of pop bangers under her belt, and she's ready to win the hearts of not just Olivia Rodrigo fans, but the world. Around this time is when she really starts to go viral on TikTok, and people are talking about her more. Her NPR Tiny Desk also comes out around this time, and between the tour and that Tiny Desk, where, I mean, it's hard to not click on that NPR thumbnail. It's like this girl with a huge red Marie Antoinette-esque beehive wig and like crazy blue eyeshadow and white makeup and a tacky pop pink prom dress. Like, you're just like, who is that? Who was that? And then you click on the video and you watch it, and it's like this incredible performance, this like amazing voice, amazing music. And so I think anyone who watched that Tiny Desk, whether they knew who she was or not, was like, oh yeah, she's a star. I mean, she was always a star, but now the world has finally caught up and has realized it, and she's just absolutely like taking off. The first week of the Guts Tour, her streams shot up 32% after a month of hardly any mainstream commercial success, and she becomes one of the most streamed artists in the United States. She drops Good Luck Babe in April. That also just completely spikes her popularity. I mean, she's had a pretty crazy run since the spring up until now. Like, this summer has been absolutely huge for Chappell Roan. Millions of streams on Spotify, hits after hits. I mean, she's had Billboard top 10s. Like, I'm not going to go too deep into all the analytics, because it just kind of feels like a jumble of numbers after a while and it doesn't really mean anything. But I think it's safe to say she's exploded. She's had a supernova explosion, if you will. She's taking it. She's taking it. I mean, it's amazing and it's incredible, but just to think how much has changed about her life and how much we've seen of this person just in a matter of a few months. Like, just a year ago, she was like a completely normal person, and now she's one of the most famous people in the world. And it's not like it was all gradually happening from, this time last year to now. Like, it's been a few months really that she's been like super famous, which is so wild to think about. That chart alone that's kind of gone viral, I think, on Twitter, of her streams, how much they've completely spiked after months of being very steady and pretty low to now. Like, I think I saw someone retweet like, oh, this graph frightens me. Like, this freaks me out just looking at it. It's like, yeah, I mean, we're looking at it, so you can only imagine how Chappell Roan feels. And well, you don't really have to imagine, because she's made it very clear how she feels about all this. She's talked a lot about how she feels in interviews and also on social media. She's made various posts about, how exciting it is, but also scary and terrifying all of this is. The first time she really is vulnerable and transparent about how she's feeling to the public was at a show. This was a few months ago at this point.
I just want to be honest with the crowd, and I just feel like I just feel a little off today, because I think that my career's just kind of gone really fast, and it's really hard to keep up. And so I just being honest that I'm just having a hard time today.
Ever since then, like, she's been more and more vocal about how she feels about the fame and how intense it's been. She said in an interview, it exploded within a matter of 4 weeks. All of a sudden, I had an album charting that came out in September. Yeah, like really think about that and how insane that is. Like, I don't think anyone could handle that. And I think she's handled it pretty well, honestly. Just to address the elephant in the room, now that we've gotten to this point, you know, she made a couple of TikToks, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, where she was basically like, hey, like, please chill. Like, you guys are stalking me and my family and I don't like it, and like, stop.
I need you to answer questions. Just answer my questions for a second. If you saw a random woman on the street, would you yell at her from the car window? Would you harass her in public? Would you go up to a random lady and say, can I get a photo with you? And she's like, no, what the fuck? And then you get mad at this random lady? Would you be offended if she says no to your time because she has her own time? Would you stalk her family? Would you follow her around? Would you try to dissect her life and bully her online? This is a lady you don't know. And she doesn't know you at all. Would you assume that she's a good person? Assume she's a bad person? Would you assume everything you read about her online is true? I'm a random... You're a random... Just think about that for a second, okay? I don't care that abuse and harassment, stalking, whatever, is a normal thing to do to people who are famous or a little famous, whatever. I don't care that it's normal. I don't care that this crazy type of behavior comes along with the job, the career field I've chosen. That does not make it okay. That doesn't make it normal. It doesn't mean I want it. It doesn't mean that I like it. I don't want whatever the fuck you think you're supposed to be entitled to whenever you see a celebrity. I don't give a fuck if you think it's selfish of me to say no for a photo or for your time or for a hug. That's not normal. That's weird. It's weird how people think that you know a person just because you see them online or you listen to the art they make.
I think for the most part, people understand where she's coming from and totally respect what she's saying. But there are some people who are like, oh, well, this is what you asked for. You know, you're a celebrity now, so you can't expect people to just leave you alone. Like, this is your job now, so, like, don't complain. I think fame for the most part is a choice that you make. Like, it's rare to become world famous, especially as an artist, without wanting it really badly. And I'm sure she did at a point. I don't know if she intended to be as famous as she is now, especially as quickly, but I'm sure she had this intention of like, I'm going to pursue this career and I want to be successful, and like, maybe her biggest aspiration was just to be able to like sell out shows and pay her bills. And she talks about how, you know, when she felt like she made it was when she sold out Bowery Ballroom, and now everything else is kind of just icing on the cake. And so I don't believe that she wants to be like Taylor Swift level famous. I don't think most people want to be Taylor Swift level famous. Like, you don't have a normal life when you're that famous, and that's something you have to be okay with. And with Chappell Roan, I think she got so famous so quickly, there's only so much control you have over that. Eventually, the beast kind of feeds itself and it's out of your control. Now, I mean, she could be like, hey, I'm taking a step back. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not making music, and just completely disappear. And I think, you know, the peak that she is now would fall. I think she's always going to be famous to a certain extent. But I mean, our attention spans are so short these days. Like, people could easily forget about Chappell Roan in a few years, but she'll always have her legacy. Like, I don't think she'll ever be able to just go back to being a normal person. You can't erase this kind of fame, but she could quit, and it seems like that's a possibility. I hope she doesn't, but she said if it gets to a point where people are stalking me and my family, like, I will walk away, and I believe her.
And like, my sister, where's my sister works, like all this weird shit. And I'm just like, this is the time when I was like a few years ago that I said if stalker vibes, like family was in danger, is when I would quit. And like, we're
Me
there.
too. Same.
We're there.
Same.
And so I'm just kind of like in this battle of like, I've like pumped the brakes on honestly anything to like make me more known.
Yeah.
It's like kind of a forest fire right now, just like being itself.
Yeah.
And like, but I'm not trying to go do a bunch of, you know,
Yeah.
Now, there's been some discourse about like what famous people owe us and what they don't, because some say, oh, like, we as fans pay your bills, like, you owe us your time and your energy even when you're not on stage. Like, if someone's like, oh, can I have a picture with you? As an artist, you should always take pictures with your fans and always acknowledge them. And I don't know if Chappell Roan necessarily was saying like, I never want to be approached in public and I never want to take pictures with fans. To me, it just seemed like she was like, please don't stalk me and like be weird to me in public and act like a psycho and like yell at me from your car, which I think is perfectly fine and normal. And I mean, even if she didn't want to take pictures of people in public and just kind of wanted to like go out and like do her thing, I don't think that's a crazy ask. I mean, obviously, realistically, like if Chappell Roan wants to go bowling, like there may be people who recognize her and like approach her, and that's something that you can't really control, unfortunately, when you're as famous as her. I think that's what's been so like disturbing to her throughout all this, especially when just a few months ago she was like a completely like normal and mostly anonymous person. I would imagine that she was expecting or hoping that people would take her identity separation more literally. Like, I think maybe she was expecting people to see Chappell Roan and love Chappell Roan, and when she takes all the makeup off and the costumes off, like she's just Kaylee and she can be a normal person, kind of like she wanted to be Hannah Montana essentially. And I think she's referenced Hannah Montana before, but unfortunately people know what she looks like. I mean, she's not Daft Punk, so unless she's got a helmet over her head, like people are gonna know what she looks like and people are gonna recognize her, and they don't take that separation literally. They don't literally think like, oh, she's not Chappell Roan, she's Kaylee, so why would I want a picture with her?
I don't know.
You technically are Hannah Montana.
It is kind of true, and I wish I would have done. Looking back at like if I were to be able to start this all over, I don't think it's realistic to do a Daft Punk thing, but I wish I would have. You know, like a helmet.
They got something. They really figured it out.
I
by
know.
Doing that.
Same with Mr. Marshmallow. But I love that Hannah had two different personalities. 'Cause it's like fucking hair that gets me in trouble all the time.
Yeah.
So I wish I would have done her. It's been very freeing to be like, oh, Chappell Roan is my drag project. And I think that's also helped personally to separate it as a job and as like a project, and then there's me as Kaylee. It's still I'm still trying to figure out the balance of it not consuming me, but I think it has been easier to kind of be like, this is me this is Chappell when I have this outfit on, this makeup, and I talk like this and la la, and because it's a very exhausting character to play.
And maybe all this is kind of like an unfortunate rude awakening and all, and I could be wrong. I'm just kind of using my imagination here, but it's hard to like be famous and live a normal life. Like most people just don't do that and can't do that. Maybe she could be kind of like a Frank Ocean later in life, where she's like, she comes out and performs and does her thing, kind of goes back into hiding for like 4 years at a time. I think it's also worth talking about fame and how it's changed over the years, especially now that we're in this digital age where social media has made celebrities so accessible to us. I think something has happened to people or to like fandoms where we are so used to having access to celebrities through our phones and on social media that we feel entitled to their time any day, anytime, anywhere, because we can engage with them anytime, anywhere, because we have our phones. And, you know, social media has made it so we can interact with celebrities on Twitter and we can watch them on Instagram Live, and like our proximity to them feels so much closer. We feel much closer to them because we can directly interact with them on social media. And so I think people have lost that kind of separation, or this like understanding that they're not only just that they're humans and not just people on a screen, but that we can't just expect to have their energy all the time, if that makes sense. And especially, you know, with phones and everything, like it's so much easier to not only find information about celebrities and their families because of the internet, but also feeling entitled to filming them or taking pictures of them when they don't want it. And like there's a constant surveillance that all of us experience, but especially celebrities. They're always being surveilled with smartphones, and it's really scary and dehumanizing. And I think being famous now is so much more intense than it was back in like the 90s. Fame is a traumatizing experience. I think we all can kind of understand that now. Like, fame is a form of trauma. Other people have talked about this. The Sprouse siblings have talked about this. Taylor Swift has talked about this. I mean, it's traumatizing. And I think sometimes people have trouble understanding that or empathizing with famous people and the trauma they experience from fame, because it's like, oh, well, if you're famous, then like you should be happy because you signed up for this, or you're rich, so we don't feel bad for you. And it's funny because as a society, it seems we've all agreed on the idea that money doesn't buy you happiness. I mean, obviously, there's, like, nuance to that. Like, if you have money, you're going to be happier. But there's, like, a baseline and there's, like, a cap to where that's actually true. Like after a certain amount of money, it doesn't really impact your happiness all that much. Just because you're rich, it doesn't mean you're happy. Just because you're famous, it doesn't mean you're happy. And wanting to make money off of your art and making your dreams come true is amazing, but being harassed and stalked isn't amazing. And I think it should be pretty simple to understand that like humans are humans, even if they are famous or they are rich or they have privilege. That doesn't excuse you to treat them like an animal or to literally harass them and do things to them that you wouldn't do to any other person. There have been studies on fame and mortality and how pop stars, rock stars have a increased mortality rate and they're more at risk of dying earlier. Rock/pop star mortality increases relative to the general population with time since fame. Increases are greater in North American stars and those with solo careers. Relative mortality begins to recover 25 years after fame in European, but not North American stars. Those reaching fame from 1980 onwards have better survival rates. For deceased stars, cause of death was more likely to be substance use or risk-related in those with more adverse childhood experiences. So something that I think is interesting is like there's a better survival rate for those who achieve fame after 1980, even though I just said I think being famous is harder now. But I think some of that has to do with like the way mental health is treated now compared to the 80s. But something else that I thought was interesting is that European stars have a higher survival rate and that North American stars are more likely to have a shorter lifespan. The difference in North America was substantively greater than that in Europe. As previously reported for both North American and European examples, the survival gap between stars and the population widened up to 25 years post-fame. At this point, however, survival in Europe stars only begins to recover in general population levels. Reasons for this may include different experiences of fame, exposure to risk factors such as drugs, and protective factors including professional well-being support. Longer performing careers include reunion tours and variations in access to universal health care and social care. So there's some different factors as to why that's true. I do think the healthcare aspect is pretty significant, and obviously like being big in America versus being big in Europe are two different kinds of fame. I'd also like to add, and this is just conjecture in my own theory, I think fame in America feels a lot more intense. I think the American attitude is a lot more entitled and a lot more in your face, whereas like celebrities can go somewhere like Japan and be, for the most part, like left alone or not as bothered. I think I remember someone talking about Beyonce riding a train in Tokyo and like being fine because people there are a lot more respectful than people in the United States. So with Chappell Roan, her struggles isn't new. Like we've seen how other pop stars, especially female pop stars, have struggled with fame. I think something that is worth noting is when you're a solo artist, you are so isolated. It's not like you're in a band where you have other people to rely on. Also, if we're thinking of a pop star versus a rock band, the lead singer is usually more visible than the drummer, for example. And so when you're a pop star, it's all on you and you're facing it all and you're alone. And I think someone like Chappell Roan maybe could feel like she's lonely or isolated because, really no one is going through what she's going through. There are people who have been super famous and have gotten famous pretty fast and had this like explosion in the mainstream, but for her, it really happened so fast, like faster than I've ever seen. I think that's also something to consider. And the study also talks about how different types of performers are exposed to different levels of risk. Rock and pop star survival also seems to relate to whether they have pursued successful solo careers. While this may simply be a proxy for level of fame, with solo performers often attracting more attention than, for instance, a drummer or keyboard player in a band, it also raises the issue of peer support as a protective factor. Thus, further research should address whether bands provide a mutual support mechanism that offers protective health effects. Community is really important. Surprise. I hope Chappell Roan has a good community. I know she mentioned that there are other pop stars who have reached out to her, kind of giving her advice or kind of helping her deal with this newfound fame.
I'm reflecting on my life, and the past couple weeks have been like cuckoo. But what's so reassuring and so fucking sick is like the pop girls that you and I have loved our whole lives, or like have been like stans the past 2 or 3 years. Like a lot of them have reached out and are like so supportive and girls, and it's so sick to know that the girls are they're really supporting each other in the pop industry. To have like people I look up to reach out and offer like a friend or help. I don't know. It's just sick. And it makes me believe in like the world.
So I think that's really good, and I hope that she doesn't feel lonely. I think that is a huge factor in like the unhappiness and mental health struggles that a lot of famous people and artists face, is they are extremely isolated, and that can be really detrimental to someone's mental health. And apologies if it seems like I'm kind of jumping around here, but I wanted to go back to talking about how the digital age has really affected and changed the way that we view celebrities. I mean, they're so influential now, and they are so like interconnected with people and their daily lives. Like fan culture, stan culture is like, I think a product of that, and how social media has changed pop culture and our parasocial relationships to celebrities. The impact of recent developments in how rock and pop stars influence the wider population should not be underestimated. The pop star Lady Gaga alone has over 20 million followers on Twitter, and the tragic death of Whitney Houston generated over 2.5 million tweets within 2.5 hours. While pop stars have had vast fan bases for decades, in recent years, this relationship has moved from passive to active, with stars now able to interact directly with fans through social media, increasing feelings of connectedness and arguably their influence. I think when you feel so deeply influenced and affected by an artist, it's easy to believe that you know them and that you have a relationship with them. I mean, I've said the word parasocial a million times, but it runs so deep now more than ever. I'm not surprised that someone like Chappell Roan, who has gotten famous so quickly and is famous in a very specific time, is struggling so much with this. Tyler, the Creator, talks about this in a and I think he words it very well as someone who's been famous for like 10 years. He's seen how famous changed. He's seen how the internet has evolved and how people have changed.
I got signed into 2010, May 2011, my first thing came out. 2011 social landscape is so different from now. It wasn't iPhones everywhere. It wasn't people being thirsty for whatever they get from the internet. It was a different time. So walking around and living and meeting people and enjoying stuff was much different up until 2016. When our phone became a thing, which, dude, technology has sped up so much, I don't even think the human brain is able to really comprehend what's going on. We're used to being able to be contacted 24/7. A big switch happened. In 2024 now, with filming, with this and that, with voice recording, all of that, that's something I'm not used to.
Yes.
That's something I don't think any of us is used to. And when I signed up for this stuff, that not only wasn't the landscape, our brain wasn't even
knowing that was coming.
So people are still adjusting. I'm adjusting to like, damn, everyone could see everything. You could just look up someone's address and motherfuckers is like, damn, I can know what my favorite artist is eating for breakfast and not feel weird about it.
Doja Cat said a lot of the things that Chappell Roan has been saying. She's been saying it for the past couple years now, it seems like. And with her, I think people didn't really understand her or receive her message very well because of how she said it. And people kind of just thought she was being rude and mean and ungrateful and saying that she hates her fans. And obviously her delivery is very different from Chappell's, but they're essentially saying the same thing. And I talked about it, and I feel like people were mad at me because I didn't say like, oh, Doja Cat, she's a and she doesn't deserve anything good at, like, I was like, I think she's just frustrated, and like, she's right, like, she doesn't know you guys, she's not your friend. And did she handle it perfectly? No, but I don't think most of us would handle this kind of situation perfectly, because I mean, we don't know her, we don't know what it's like to be her, just like we don't know what it's like to be Chappell Roan, and to be in this position is unique, and it's intense. And I think most people who are in a situation like Chappell Roan or Doja Cat would absolutely lose their mind and would not be graceful about it and would not be all diplomatic like they're the goddamn Queen of England. Like, it's just a lot to expect from people. And I think with Doja Cat, they took her words very personally and they felt hurt by what she said. And, you know, I think having a healthy dose of like reality is important when it comes to celebrities. Like, I do think that stardom is like some sort of disease. Like, I just feel like it's like a mental illness or something. And like when Doja Cat's like, y'all, I don't like my old music, and if you like that shit, then you're stupid. I don't take it personally. I'm not like, oh my god, Doja Cat called me stupid. I'm like, hey, I liked those albums, but like, do you? I don't know. She's not my friend. I don't know her. I like her new music. I like her old music, and that's just what it is. I don't expect much from people like Doja Cat. I expect to listen to music that I enjoy, and that's as far as it goes. Like, I don't think she like owes me anything as someone who listens to her music other than like showing up on time to your set. I think you do owe your fans that much, but other than that, like, I don't know. Obviously, like, yeah, it'd be preferable if like the person you listen to is likable. I think a big part of being a pop star is like making people believe that like you could be friends in real life, which like I get why that's a thing. But realistically, like that's just not real. Overall, I hope that Chappell Roan is able to get through this and like still make music on her terms. And it seems like throughout her career, she has been able to do things on her terms, which I think is really amazing. And if she continues to keep that energy, she'll be fine. She talks about not really caring about the charts and how all of this new success has just been, you know, the icing on the cake. And she's always stayed true to herself. And I think if you can do that in this kind of industry, then you are in a really good position, because I don't think everyone has that, unfortunately. And yeah, I hope she doesn't quit, but if she does, I would understand. I think maybe she could always come back and still have a fan base that's more niche, but still allows her to live off of her music and tour and be successful, but leave Chappell alone. Anyway, thank you for watching. Go check out my podcast, Shameless Promo Podcast, with my friend Rumi. New episodes every Thursday. This week's episode is all about celebrity fragrances and the history of celebrity perfume. So if you're interested in that, then click the link in the description. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.